third element that Jesus speaks of here is that we are called to follow him. And this idea of following him has both a kind of a literal and a symbolic meaning. So the disciples that Jesus is speaking to are about to go on a physical journey with Jesus towards Jerusalem. They are going to literally walk the path with him, follow in his footsteps, listen to his teachings, and seek to follow his way of life and his example. So there is this kind of physical journey that the disciples go on. But the idea of following also has this symbolic notion of discipleship, and you can't really separate the two that easily. So in the beginnings of the Gospels, when Jesus calls guys like Andrew, Peter, James and John, he calls them to follow him. And they would have understood that by that summons they were being called to be disciples, to be students, to follow Jesus and his teachings. And this becomes clear throughout Luke's Gospel, that to be a follower is to be a disciple, and to be a disciple is to be a follower. Jesus says, "Follow me." And he, in these verses before, has just been talking about his own upcoming suffering and persecution. So when he then goes on to say and call his disciples to follow him in this journey, there should be this expectation that this is not going to be an easy path to tread, that we ourselves may encounter opposition, suffering and persecution. In Luke chapter 6, Jesus says that a student is not above his teacher or above his master, but when he is fully mature, he will be like them. So both these ideas of bearing our cross, carrying our cross, and following Jesus, both have to do with the sense of identifying with Jesus, being committed to obeying his teachings, walking in his ways, and despite what may come against us. So in light of those two things, if we go back to the beginning, to the idea of denying ourselves, then we might have a better idea of what that actually might look like. And if we consider that the self is that aspect of ourselves that always wants to be in charge, always wants to be in control, that part of us, maybe the idea of the ego that wants to be honored, wants to be glorified, wants to be kind of held in esteem by other people, then Jesus is saying that we need to lay that aside. We need to kind of deny that aspect, deny that ego in order to follow him, because he invites us to be part of something much bigger than ourselves. He invites us to lay down our lives and to follow him. So the idea of picking up our cross, of dying to ourselves and following him in this difficult journey, is what it means to deny ourselves. All these three things are very similar, saying very similar things, but at its core, at its center, is about saying yes to this discipleship journey, no matter what may come, no matter what shame or suffering or dishonor might entail.